You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Ask Drone U. As always, my name is Paul.
My name is Rob. Grateful to be hanging out with you, Mr. Aiken. Pablo, thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with us.
Yeah, grateful to be here with you, Rob, and everyone who is listening. We got an exciting show today. Just want to say thanks to Tom for sending in this question. As we did a production with the local baseball team, which is actually an interesting story about how it kind of all came about. But if you're not familiar with Cinewhoop, and if you are an experienced or advanced drone pilot and you need that extra push, you need to catch the bug again, as we would say, Cinewhoop is definitely that challenge. I'm talking about the small FPV drones that you mount a GoPro to. And I have to say, Rob, I am astonished at the massive leaps forward by GoPro in their image stabilization. It's absurd. I've been out of the GoPro game for some time.
Yeah.
And, when we got that GoPro Hero 9, I thought, oh, okay, cool, another GoPro, whatever. But
haven't even really used it.
Yeah, we used it for a couple of productions, some time lapses and whatnot, but that was about it. It kind of turned into a time lapse camera for me. But sticking it on the Cinewhoop drone and actually flying for this video, I was stunned on how stable the footage was and how good it looked and the exposure and the speed and the lack of aliasing if you get your codecs right on Final Cut Pro. And honestly, I was just astonished. And this morning, Rob, GoPro announced a brand new product. It is called the GoPro Hero 10 Bare Bones.
Oh, for Cinewhoop?
Yes.
Nice.
Or excuse me, Black Bones, not Bare Bones. It should be called Bare Bones, but that's just me. But yeah, here we go. The Black Bones. It is made specifically for Cinewhoops. So it takes the weight down to a third of its original weight. It was like, I think 169 grams, and it got down to 59 grams.
No, so like wow.
1/3 the weight, yeah.
That's incredible.
And so
that is what you needed.
I know. Yeah, and they have this new mount on the camera too to make it like perfect for Cinewhoop. So I think we're going to have to buy one of these, frankly, because, when I was doing this Cinewhoop production for the Isotopes baseball team, we're going to go over, what we did. We're going to actually put the video in the show so that you can watch it and kind of go over what it looked like, how we went through the process of planning, how it came about. But, I had gone into the Cinewhoop stuff, and we'll get into the question here in a second, but I had gone into the Cinewhoop stuff thinking that I would need to use a software like Real Steady to make the footage, nice, crispy, gimbal-like, smooth, And it's funny enough because when I looked at the original file, I was like, wow, this really doesn't even need stabilization. It looks great. And I actually tried to use Real Steady anyway, just to see how much better the stabilization would be. And Real Steady would not let me stabilize the footage because it had already been stabilized by GoPro.
It's like we can't do any better.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
I don't know either, to be honest, but I will say, we are in the middle of, we filmed a Cinewhoop class. So we've got a class coming out for members on how to get into Cinewhoop, how to learn how to fly Cinewhoop or learn to fly FPV. And then kind of going into equipment. We've learned a lot over the last 8 months of doing this. And we're also going to go into how we plan this shoot because there was essentially like 10 to 12 different scenes inside of this one shot take, which really made this extremely difficult as far as our production is concerned. But going into it, I thought, oh yeah, we would use Real Steady, we would use the Cinewhoop, we would use this, we would use that. But I think the process is getting even easier for consumers. And I think that we are on the precipice of Cinewhoop really becoming mainstream. I mean, you're seeing Cinewhoop videos in Super Bowl ads. You're seeing it everywhere.
A lot of people are using them for residential real estate too.
Oh yeah, the indoor tours and
It's
whatnot.
actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like Nick Lang was really on the precipice of that.
Could
And
be.
there was a company called Indoor Drone Tours out of Colorado, and they actually just made it on Denver 7 News about what they do. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're in the real estate game and you want to step it up a notch to get more money, to get more work, to do more higher end stuff, look at Cam Sale, Drone U member in Cinewhoop. He's been flying Cinewhoop for a year now, and that's all he does now. And so it goes to show that, like, learning new skills is the greatest investment that you can ever make in yourself, because you're able to sell that investment time and time and time and time and time again. It's the ultimate scalability. But I think we're going to have a really interesting, fun show today. Just want to say thank you, Tom, for your question today. And also just want to say thank you to everyone who is a Drone U member. Thank you to everyone who is a props member. We are very excited. Soon we're going to be launching props for LUCID cleaning drones. We're going to be launching props for public safety and props for public safety fire EMS. And we've got a new props program called Props for Commercial Roof Inspections. We're working on that this week. I don't know, that'll probably be the last one to come out. But if you are getting involved in drone programs or teams, you definitely have to check out the Props program. There is no educational platform on the internet like the Props program. It was built and designed to manage multiple pilots going through various different training programs, but to provide them with systematic communication, systems to make your drone program easy and seamless and be able to manage that all in one place. So PROPS actually stands for Professional Reliable Operators Practicing Safety. And, we've been working on this for years now, and it's out and it's really gaining steam. It's really exciting. Drone U has diversified a little bit to really help out public safety teams, drone programs, lots of construction, lots of inspections, lots of utility stuff. So we're really grateful for all of our current clients as it's grown almost 500 or 600% in the last 6 months. So very excited for that. And just want to say thank you to all of you who really were a part of building up Drone U and now a part of building up the props program as well. So we also, just before we play the question, we do have some trainings coming up, Dallas and Denver, Flight Mastery. If you're ready to raise your confidence, fly through gates, have some fun, earn an educational discount, join us for that. Also, we'll be going over comprehensive mapping, which is 3 days of mapping training. We've been answering a lot of mapping questions recently, and I have to say, if you're doing anything mapping related, I highly recommend that you attend one of these trainings. You can check them out, thedroneu.com.
Hey, Paul and Rob, Tom again. Hey, saw one of your Instagram stories about you flying the Cinewhoop around some venues, and I was wondering if you could go over kind of some of the shot planning on that, the logistics, and kind of how you go ahead and get approvals for that kind of stuff and everything that goes into putting something together to get a shot like that. Thanks again.
So thank you, Tom. Always appreciate your questions, and they tend to be very timely, which is cool in terms of what you ask when. But I'm excited to hear you talk about this. I mean, obviously, I kind of watched it unfold and kind of watched the ins and the outs and the conversations and all of that stuff. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about this whole story, which I don't know if you'll talk about today, but is the whole sales element of it and how it came about.
Yeah.
Which I think is a super cool lesson in kind of how you operate and how I think all pilots should operate in terms of there's probably, no matter what you're doing or where you are, if you're in the right mindset, there's opportunity sitting right next to you. And you just kind of have to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. So take it away.
Which is so funny because classic Paul, there were some definite classic Paul moments where I'm like, what do these people want? Why are they blowing up my phone all the time? Like, wham, wham, wham. Shut up, Paul. Shut up. So,
yeah.
But, okay, so I think we should take this in, how did it come about, the planning? Because there were, I would call it 3 parallels of planning. 1, practicing the actual flying. 2, planning out the storyboard. And then 3, planning out the right equipment, because I mean, it was right up until the last week before we did it that I was like, okay, I finally feel good about which drone, which battery, which mount. If you remember, I changed the camera mount literally 2 days before the final shoot.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah, sitting in there in the conference room messing around with itty bitty screws.
Literally, so the drone I ended up using was a Bumblebee, iFlight Bumblebee V2.
Which, by the way, the investment in this shoot in terms of equipment, not tremendous.
No, not at all. I mean,
several $100s.
Well, we had one Cinewhoop already, the Bumblebee we ended up using. We bought another one because we wanted to have a backup, because if you're not familiar, Cinewhoop drones, well, they break, especially when you're learning how to fly them. I mean, I had the iFlight Bumblebee and then crashed it I don't know how many times. I feel like the most famous crash was when I was learning in acro mode to do barrel rolls, and I hit the wrong switch in the parking lot, and the drone literally landed upside down and then sparked a battery fire right by the owner of the doctors next door. So,
I didn't even know about that. Yeah. Oh gosh.
But I mean, all in all, I think we were in it for about $1,500 if you also account for the money that we spent last year on getting a Cinewhoop. So I mean, if you look at how much we spent just in the last 2 months for this shoot, I would say maybe $700.
That's what I want to emphasize, though, because that's the whole point, if I may, of Drone U, is learning from what we've done in our mistakes and successes. And so we can take what would cost you $1,500 to $2,000 and bring it way down based on all the work you did.
Well,
right?
For sure. And I mean, I could not imagine teaching FPV or anything drone-wise without having a lot of extensive experience, because what may have worked for you 1 month isn't going to work the next month or the next. Everything evolves so fast that I really don't understand how other people in the industry, talk out of their booties, as I would say. But getting back to the positive, you're right. Learning this, we learned about how we can use certain Cinewhoops on 4S batteries to fly inside. And then we learned how to fly, the same Cinewhoop on a 6S battery and have insane power outside. And then how when we finally add our GoPro onto the drone, the 6S battery now feels like a 4S battery, So, I mean, like you alluded to, Rob, there is so much that has to be learned by experience, because you are forced to make it work.
Right.
You are forced to essentially have to figure it out, because you have to get it right for the client. And I feel like one of the biggest questions I've been getting on Instagram is, how many takes was it for you guys to actually get the shot? Well, on practice day, so that was 3 days before the final shoot, I flew the flight lines 9 times, and I realized that the flight into the door, into the pro shop, which we're going to show the video at the end of the podcast, the flight into the door was probably the hardest line, because it's kind of like an S curve into the door. And then the second hardest shot is through the pizza box out into the concourse. And then the third hardest shot had to have been flying through the nets, because all the stadiums have added these nets. I mean, we did all that mapping on all the baseball stadiums for them to calculate the interference from these new nets. Well, all the nets are up now. So that was a bear in itself, because it's not just a flat net. It was actually like a T section, So, I mean, there very, very, very small margin of error. And then we flew through Orbit's legs.
Poor Orbit.
Yeah. He came up to me afterwards and he was like, scared. I can't say it on the show, but he was very scared.
He was very scared.
There's probably not much protection from his fur, as they would say. So,
he should have been protected.
Yeah.
If I would have been him,
and I'd
have doubled up.
And the funny thing is, one of the most important things that the Isotopes went over in this planning process was how we talked about orbit. They made sure, they were like, we need to be very specific about how we talk about orbit, because there are kids involved and we need to maintain our image of orbit, etc. So I would say in the planning session, that was probably one of the most interesting things. But getting to how all this happened. So as many of you know, we started the props education platform. It's supposed to be organized, sequential, intuitive, interactive, etc., to really streamline technical education, make it fun and easy to manage. Well, we have been working with a company called LUCID Drone Technologies. And I know Rob knows about LUCID in depth and in detail because we've been working on this since September of last year. And we finally just finished that program, which was an astronomical amount of work. Like, we might have billed for X, but it was X times 4.
It's all going to be worth it, though.
Oh, 100%.
And it's going to help them so much.
100%. And I'm actually very proud to deliver what we delivered to them. But we wanted to showcase in this LUCID props program. So we built props for drones and teams, and now we're building it for manufacturers. So manufacturers are like, we can't find good trainers. It costs us extreme amounts of money. We really need a solid drone training program from zero to hero, and that someone can take anywhere. And so we developed props. But we also developed this visual troubleshooting guide. So imagine if you had a problem with your drone, you could log into your props account and there's literally a 3D model of the drone. And on that 3D model, literally they can move it around and compare it to their drone. And if they have an issue, they click on that area and then videos pop up on how to solve issues with that particular problem. But the thing is that in this props program, we really wanted to display the various methodologies of using this cleaning drone. This drone is made to spray water, chemicals, solvents, etc. It is made to clean windows, buildings, mostly I would argue East Coast buildings where you see coastal buildings, right? There are a lot of buildings in California that could really use this drone.
Well, really everywhere. You've got dust, you've got sand, there's all. They're gonna have a pretty big platform to work from.
Especially when you consider how LUCID fits into the whole smart cities concepts.
Yeah.
And how governments are working towards smart cities and how LUCID's drone can help so much with maintaining buildings autonomously. But that said, one of the things we wanted to showcase is cleaning stadiums. Now, this was kind of back in the wake of COVID. COVID has subsequently, everyone's realized it's a cold virus. And so that said, we're kind of out of the realm of COVID, but we wanted to show using that drone at a stadium to showcase the power of cleaning with that drone and what it can do. Well, we've had a long-standing relationship with Isotopes Baseball, a team club. And I had reached out to our contact there and said, hey, we really want to get into Isotopes to show this drone. And if you guys want a demo on how it works, great. We're happy to do that, but we're not here to sell drones. Like we really are doing a training program and want to demonstrate how this would work. Well, they gave us access to the field and they gave us access to the stadium. Everything went swimmingly. And then a few days later, I get a phone call from the GM of the team, like the head guy of the team, who I thought I was already working with, but I guess I wasn't. So that said, John gives me a call. He's like, hey, have you seen this bowling video, this Cinewhoop bowling video? And I'm like, yeah, I know the guy who filmed it. And he's like, I want to do that with the baseball team. And I'm like, are you serious? Like right now, yes or no? He's like, oh yeah, 100%. He's like, let's work up a deal. He goes, I know there's going to be a lot of planning and logistics in this, but I want to work a deal to do this Cinewhoop video at the stadium. And it wasn't until a few weeks later that I realized to Rob as we're writing up the deal, hey, we could actually use this video to do a really cool Cinewhoop class.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, we got this job. We're doing this job. We're going to show you how to do this job. We're going to show you what we learned about equipment, learning to fly, cameras, etc. in this job. So you can see exactly how we produce this video. Because by far and away, Rob, this was the hardest production we've ever done.
Well, there were a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved. It was a fairly vast area, not like ag or something, but in a different dynamic. A lot of people had to be on cue. It was really quite the production. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, to do a one-shot video with 12 scenes in that one-shot video takes a lot of logistics, a lot of planning. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of to Tom's question of like, what did it take? Well, we had 5 meetings with Isotopes. The first 2 were Zoom calls, and we kind of wrote out an idea of, well, what do we want to show? Well, we want to show the experience of going to an Isotopes game. So literally, we want to show all of the highlights in 60 seconds. Like boom, 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 you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we wrote up a storyboard to only literally nix the whole thing like 2 weeks later and rewrite the whole storyboard. So I actually have the storyboard in front of me. I literally just use Google Docs. It's not an actual storyboard where we had like images to showcase what we were showing. We essentially have this single space 5-page document that we wrote up after the 4th meeting. And so we had an initial storyboard during the 3rd meeting, but the 4th meeting, we actually went out to the stadium. We walked the flight lines because I thought that was so important to walk the flight line, because we also have to maintain visual line of sight. Even though we've got the goggles on, we've got Steve as my visual observer because this was in a 0 grid. So that's the next story. But so we had to figure out walking the flight line, how exactly it would go. You want to make sure that you don't have too long of distances to fly between scenes, right? Because if you do, then the viewer is going to be essentially bored.
Yeah.
So
theoretically, I mean, it all happens so fast. That's a fine line.
It is.
Probably have more room than you think, but still you want to err on the side of excitement.
Well, again, too, you got to think about it. For as much as you have extreme acceleration, you have to have extreme braking, so.
Yeah, or just smooth. I mean, you don't want to just.
Exactly.
Right. You got to show what you're trying to show.
Exactly. So it is a fine line. And walking the flight lines helped us understand where I would need to be positioned as the pilot and where the VO would need to be as well in order to maintain FAA regulations. As many of you know, you can do Cinewhoop indoors and not be FAA licensed whatsoever because it's not the FAA's jurisdiction. But as soon as you go outside, that's a whole nother story. You do need your 107, etc. And I mean, that indoor drone tours company, I want to ask them if they're 107 rated because they do everything inside. I think the answer is no, but I've asked them to come on the show numerous times. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So that said, in planning that 4th meeting, we went out there, we rewrote every scene. Like I had my little book, my little notebook, and I wrote down each scene, which turned into this 5-page document, which was 12 scenes. So I'll just quickly go through them. But the first scene is essentially starting right outside of the Isotopes kind of billboard and sign, moving below the stadium arch sign, which is kind of like over the pedestrian pathways and stairs up into the stadium. Now, below that sign, we were supposed to have a mariachi band essentially playing music, which they were. And so we had to separate them out so I wouldn't fly over them, right? Because, FAA rules, can't fly over people. So I flew between them. So,
and by the way, one of them had the best smile. It still sticks in my mind. He was so happy to be there. Anyways,
he was. And, from the mariachis, that's where we were supposed to go into the pro shop. Well, later on in the 5th meeting, they're like, well, we want to have a bunch of lowriders out there. We have a lowrider night. We want to showcase that.
Very New Mexican.
Yes, very, right. Which I was a little apprehensive to. I'm not even going to lie. I was like, well, I don't want to fly through their vehicles. Like I can, but I don't want to because a battery fire and one of those things is going to be a little bit more than I think my insurance is going to be stoked to cover. So a couple weeks later, we set those lowriders up so that we had the convertibles kind of up front and I flew like right over them. So you could still kind of get a sense for those convertibles. But we move into the pro shop and we're essentially supposed to show people shopping, which here's the funniest part. We had 2 people set up to showcase the shopping in the store. And then last minute, literally on the day of the final shoot, the players, we had 5 actual players from the team there. And the funniest thing happens. They're like, our girlfriends are bored. Can we put them to work? Literally. And we're like, well, let's see your girlfriends. That's what I said.
Boy.
Probably not HR approved, but I said, let's see them. We'll give them something easy to do. Well, 2 tall, skinny, beautiful blonde girls. We're like, let's put them in the shop. And they'll be talking to each other, showing shopping, etc. They loved it. They were perfect. The thing is that the shop was also where myself and the VO were positioned, because I was flying from the outside of the stadium, moving into the stadium, through the concourse, and then out to the field. So I had to maintain that visual line of sight. So literally we planned for me to be, because I saw Paul Nurk do this as well, where he was in a chair and they literally pushed his chair to maintain the signal and him and the VO and all of that. So we did the same thing. And so I was in this chair thanks to my friend Jason, who had very randomly bought me some office chair wheels for Christmas a couple years ago.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I don't know what to say to that either.
It worked out, though.
It sure did. So I have these like skateboard wheels, or I would call them more roller blade wheels for the chair. And it actually was amazing because it made it a very smooth motion. Because Steve moved me the first time, Rob, and my chair turned around and I felt like throwing up in that pro shop.
One more reason you practice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was like, oh, stop, Steve, stop moving. And he's like, are you okay? And everyone's like, dude, your face was so white, like a ghost. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt too. But as we exit the pro shop, that's where our fourth scene happens, where we've got a bartender handing a beer to a patron, and we fly through the kiosk of where the bar is. And then they also wanted to showcase how they have good food there. So originally we were going to fly through the pizza box. I mean, we had cut a hole in it during our practice runs. I had flown through it twice, but during both runs, I had kind of during one of them, I actually hit the bottom of the box and flew off. And I realized, well, if there's a pizza in there, I really can't do that, because if we get grease on those motors, the shoot is over. Yeah. So we decided to actually remove that box and just have the box open. And
which worked out just fine.
Yeah. And fly essentially right over the box. So then we fly and move down the concourse and into the stadium seats, where on the dugout we had these 10 mariachi dancers. Really beautiful. Like,
stunning.
Yeah, the color was amazing.
Yeah.
And so that also helped us kind of fill that void in going from the concourse to the field. So we see those we see those dancers, and I have to say, Rob, that was one of the hardest flight lines, because it has to be a big giant curve, like a half moon motion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't see in your peripheries where the opening for the net was.
Well, that, and you're trying to rotate so that you're actually seeing the dancers well.
Exactly.
So it kind of all worked together to get around and go through the net.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, made it look easy.
That was one of the hardest motions to master. So then as we enter onto the field after viewing the mariachi dancers on the dugout, this is where we were going to see Orbit, the mascot of the baseball team, in a pickle between the first baseman and the second baseman. Now, I will say the only complaint that the stadium team has had was that I wasn't closer to them to show that scene. But we had timed that scene so many times, and they were honestly the one group that was missing their cues kind of over and over again. And so we had a safety shot where I was much closer to them, and you see the ball hit the mitt like right in front of the drone. But there were some other flight lines that I thought didn't look as smooth or as good. So we went with the final take, the seventh take. And so as we show that pickle, we're essentially just yawing just slightly towards the what is it called? Home plate, and to see the pitcher. The pitcher throws a strike, literally strikes out the batter. And I have got to say, like, some of these players really had their acting game on point, because the ump was perfect with his, "You're out of here," you know, and, you know, it was perfect to see like the batter walk off in like in shame. Like,
with his head down.
Yeah, that was so glorious. Like, it was, and he was not instructed to do that. Like, honestly,
he's like, been here, done that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Literally.
Baseball. You're successful 30% of the time, you're killing it.
Yeah. And so then we moved around the umpire and kind of went down that third base line where the mascot races were going on. So, you know, I grew up in DC. We had the Nationals. And so we have the presidents that run the little race, you know. But here in Albuquerque, we have the red chili, the green chili, the jar of salsa, and the tortilla running.
Slash taco. Yeah.
Taco. Yeah, forgive me.
Well, I don't know if we can, Paul.
And so we fly down that third base line to see them start their race, right? And we're kind of tracking behind them as they're racing. And then we exit literally through the mascot's legs. And then we go up all the way from second base to the very tip of the outfield, and you can see
above
it
the lights.
Yeah, above the lights. And you can see it in the video. I mean, I am like ramming the sticks, like
to get it up.
To try to get there. Because again, the idea was to get all of these 12 scenes in 60 seconds. It ended up being 90 seconds. They were happy with that. I was happy with that. I thought it looked really clean anyway. And so we go up to kind of where the kids play section is, right? The inflatables, they've got the Topes Tower, which is this little mechanical, roller coaster ride. They got the carousel. And so we orbit around that and then essentially fly between the lights back into the stadium so that they can have their ending credits pretty much. And I have to say, Rob, it was by far one of the hardest shoots ever. And it was really nice. The Albuquerque Journal, our big newspaper here, did a write-up on the video about how hard it was and gave credit to literally every single group that was involved.
Yeah.
That was really cool to see.
It took a lot of people working together. So I kind of want to ask you, what do you think was the most important one or two maybe elements that made it be the success that it was?
Teamwork. There were 50 people involved in that production. And what's really funny is Becca was the lead.
I was going to say, probably shout out for her.
Yeah,
Becca
Zook was in charge of coordination with the Isotopes group. She did a phenomenal job kind of telling everyone. She set up all the cues. We worked on them together on that final day to get the cues right, because like entering in the drone, flying into the pro shop, that sound was the cue for the girls for shopping. Okay. And then on the radio, Becca's hanging out behind the glass. You can't see it in the video. She's on the radio, like drone coming through pro shop. Let's serve that beer. And literally like beer, pizza box opens. At that same pro shop cue was the cue for the dancers. When I made it halfway between the dancers, there's a little hash mark on the field where you have like first baseline, but then there's a hash mark for like the batter's box. When the drone passed that hash mark, or not batter's box, but like the first base coach kind of line. Sorry, I'm not a baseball fan.
No, you're fine.
Rob's looking at me like, what? You don't know what this means?
I'm not going to sit here and correct you.
No, it's okay.
Baseball is my sport, so it's all good.
Well, I appreciate your humility there, Rob. But that said, that once we pass that hash mark, whatever it is,
I think we've mentioned the hash mark enough.
Yeah. That was the cue for the pickle and the pitcher. So because when you're looking at the dancers, you want to see that there's something going on the field, And so then once I got essentially to the home plate, and as I was halfway between home plate and third base, that was the cue for the race. And then that was the cue for orbit. And so that kind of covers all of the cues that were involved. But Becca was the one on the radio. And what's super funny is we did the pre-flight safety briefing, like we're supposed to do for FAA. And I'm expecting Becca and the GM of the team. And I mean, like literally every executive on the team was there that day, except for one. So I was expecting them to lead it, explain what was going on, bring me in. Here's our pilot. Here's some words from our pilot. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hey, Paul, come up here and lead this thing and tell us what's going on. I'm like, oh, okay. I will do that.
So the lesson, be prepared.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I want to give Becca the credit for coordinating it, but at that meeting, it looked like I was coordinating the whole thing, which is really not the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so between the lowriders, the dancers, the 5 players, everyone involved on the concession stands, the store, there were about, I think it was like 48, 49 people. I mean, it was a big production.
Yeah.
So on top of that, we've got a crew filming the whole thing for the class. So
yeah, it's incredible. It's so cool and so fun. One of the things that I noticed just having looked at the storyboard is the amount of detail that goes into it. In terms of the number of people, just the timing, how many pizza boxes, all of it, it's very detailed, and you might not necessarily hit every detail in the actual shoot that makes the final cut, right?
Yeah.
But you still have that sort of path in your mind with all the details worked out. So
100%.
that was really interesting to me, all the detail that went into it, because I could see it being very, very sort of summarized of fly through here and see what happens, but it's not like that.
No, it's
Not at all.
not like that at all. And I mean, I think it's a good point to bring up the detail because even at the end of the storyboard, we've got like for each scene, we have notes on safety and notes for logistics. Like what are the staff that we need? What are the accessories that we need for that scene? And then below that, we essentially had our practice rehearsals, which due to the spring New Mexico winds, we were supposed to have 3 days of practice for this. And I got one morning, like a couple of hours in the morning one day. And that was it. And then it's like, okay, showtime in 48 hours. And we're like, oh, geez. So
there was a lot of Paul sitting out in front of the office in a chair flying through stuff.
Yes.
That was your practice.
Yes.
But in terms of practicing on location, you didn't get much of that.
No, not at all. And so that kind of goes into those 3 parallels of practice. It was 1, setting up the storyboard, planning it out. 2 was getting in the Cinewhoop practice, flying outside in the chair. Would you guys guess what the number 1 obstacle that I used to do all the training? Rob's Jeep. Literally.
We should have opened it up for you so you could go through it as well.
We'll get there, Rob. No.
Okay, that's cool. So I have another question, and that is, did John or whoever else, Becca, did they know that you had never done this before?
No.
Okay. See, I asked that because I didn't think they did.
I was not expecting that question. That was kind of like a like no.
At this point,
no, Rob,
at this point, it's okay, even if they hear it, right? Because you obviously came through.
Crushed it. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the reason I asked that question is I want people to, I mean, obviously you got to work and be and operate within yourself, but also be ballsy.
Yes.
Try stuff. Take a risk.
Yes.
Because it was a risk.
But it was calculated too.
Well, of course. I mean, you don't want to take a risk without some calculation to mitigate that risk.
True.
But nonetheless, there's risk.
And I think it's an important point too to like say that you've got to have that baseline of practice.
Yeah.
So that on the day of the shoot, if you need to push it a little bit, at least you have that foundation and you're not like completely out of your comfort zone.
Oh, absolutely. And so I would guess, correct me, but I would guess that you want to go into this. You're going to have nerves. That's just inevitable. There's got to be some butterflies, but you're confident.
Yeah, you have to.
Right.
And you can't show it. And that I will say that was the highest pressure production I have ever done. I mean, literally at the very last take, I was like, okay, I only have 2 batteries, this one and one more. And if I don't get it, we're done. And even as I say it, I take a big deep breath because I sat in that chair. I had already powered on the drone. The camera was already rolling. And I mean, like, if you look at the final clip, it was rolling for a couple of minutes as I sat in that chair, composed myself, took a lot of deep breaths, said a little prayer, asked for a little help.
Or a lot of help.
Yeah, or a lot of help. And then got it. I have to say, Rob, I was really not expecting you to ask that hard question because it is a very real reality. And as much as I don't want to admit it, I realize how powerful it is to admit that and say like, look, yeah, it really was the first one I did. I mean, I've flown through a couple of houses in Cinewhoop, but nothing for an actual like production,
Well, and you typically don't. I've not seen, I'm sure they're out there, but I've not seen Cinewhoop videos that are produced like this. I mean, you see them flying through houses, flying through cool stuff, there's a lot of different ones that are out there, but I haven't seen one that was this produced with all these different scenes and so forth. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So just want to say that we've got a class coming out on how to do this. We will also include the storyboard. We've got recordings of all the meetings and everything. He's got some shots of me practicing, so you can kind of see that. The last part of all this, before we show you the video, was the FAA had updated the LANCE grids, the UAS FM grids here in Albuquerque, and areas of town that used to be 100, 200-foot zones were now 0 grids. And, the cynic, as all of you know that I am, Rob too, I was angry. I was like, I could have, like, literally, it wasn't even 6 months ago, I got an automatic authorization to go fly at Isotopes. And so I was nervous because I had realized this maybe a week before the final shoot date. And I was like, crap, we have got to get an airspace authorization in. I got it filed 3 days before practice, or 2 days before practice.
This is a real blessing.
Yes, it really was. And I actually want to say shout out to Roger at the FAA for helping me out through this process, because he was really, he gives me hope with the FAA for sure. So long story short is I applied for all 3 days of practice and the final shoot. They all got declined because Roger emailed me and said, look, I know that if it's a Lance active airport, it will not let you set a date range to apply for a wide area authorization. Just put all the days that you want to fly in the comments section, and I will give you that approval. Well, he went 100 steps beyond that and gave me a 2-week blanket, go fly whatever you want, approval. And he gave it, I want to say it was either 100 or up to 125 feet, because one of the key things I think to get this approval, and this is speculation at this point, this is a guess, but I said highest MoCA are the stadium lights, and the stadium lights are 125 feet, and I'm staying below that. And so essentially I'm saying I'm not even in navigable airspace. It's kind of like a soft, like, hey,
yeah,
like if there are airplanes or helicopters flying here, they got much bigger problems than me.
Yeah,
you know what
totally.
I'm saying? So he gave me the approval. We got it all set. He actually gave it to me same day. We had to cancel practice that day though, because the approval came in a little late and the winds were a little high. So we decided not to fly that date. But I have to say, literally, the approval ended 2 days ago, by the way. Honestly, the experience that we got in their new approval system for these zero grids, I think, was extremely valuable. But even so, to the point that in the Albuquerque Journal article, he says at the very end of the article, it's the second to last sentence, that like the video ends with flying over the lights into the stadium. I emailed him and called him and I said, can you change the word above to between? Because my airspace authorization was literally based off the fact that I would not fly over the stadium lights. And if you look at the video, I'm not over the lights,
No, you would have been very sensitive to that.
So I was like, can you please change this one word? No answer. Shocker. But anyway, I don't know if they changed it or not. But I just didn't want to get any flack, from the
Well, you can
FAA.
see on the video, though.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's recorded.
But anyway, so we're going to be doing a lot on Cinewhoop here for members. Again, I think that this is one of the funnest things that you can do right now as a drone pilot, especially if you've been through the whole gamut of drone stuff and you've kind of lost your energy, your drive. Cinewhoop will push you. It will be that challenge to keep you going. And I have to say, there is a sense of liberty and freedom in flying Cinewhoop. There are no no-fly zones. There are no limitations. There's no update your firmware before you take off or we're going to limit the takeoff. Okay, none of that crap. It's just arm and beep.
But you better keep the beep going or it's going like this.
Oh, yeah. I let PJ fly outside and I'm like, there's no hover, PJ. You're descending. Okay, elevate. And he's like, it really doesn't stop moving ever. I'm like, no, because there's no GPS. So that was funny to watch PJ try to fly FPV while he was here at the Drone News Studios. But that said, guys, take a look at this video. Let us know what you think. We've got a class coming for all of you members out there. And just so you know, too, an update on classes, we have that wedding videography class coming out. We just launched multiple new Don't Crash courses on various drones. We've got new drones in the hopper. And I have to say, I think that this is a truly fun and freeing experience. And it's a whole new way to fly that I personally absolutely love. And I will say, I fully understand now why some FPV guys say the DJI FPV drone is not the one to learn on. I was like, no, this is good. It helps you learn, blah, blah, blah. No, there's so many nuances that force you to relearn certain systems of truly flying FPV. And
fun nonetheless, but maybe not the way to learn true FPV.
True. And not only that, the DJI FPV drone has a gimbal on it, and the footage out of the Cinewhoop was smoother. And it's not gimbaled. That's like a little bombshell. Drop the mic here. But
On that note, let's play the video.
Yeah, on that note, here it is. By the way, the sound design was probably the hardest part in editing. So all those sounds are artificial, just so you know. Because in the video, all you hear is... So anyway, but enjoy the video. Thanks for joining us. Let us know what you think.
Permiso para cantar esta canción, a presentar este equipo que son mi corazón. Señores, pido permiso para cantar esta canción, a presentar este equipo que son mi corazón. Mariachis de Nuevo México, no hay otros igual. Son todos buenos gallos en el juego de béisbol. Mariachis de Nuevo México, no hay otros igual. Son bravos y buenos gallos en el juego de béisbol.
So fire it up, totes, and bring home a win. It's a whole new ball game. Albuquerque, Isotopes. It's a whole new ball game.
All right, we'll see you next time.